Hey everyone, World of Warcraft has been running for over 16 years as of the time of writing this video, and it keeps bringing a lot of new players in the game and old players back to the game. But one issue with having an MMO so old and so mainstream is that new and returning players are just expected to know a lot of things that older players have been learning for the last 16 years. So in this series, I wanted to go over some of the niche gameplay basics that very few people will bother to tell you or teach you about in raids or dungeons, but that you are expected to know and apply. To start with, we're gonna go over 4 basic beginner mistakes that I see players still doing all the time when I play with them in dungeons and raids. So without further ado, let's get into it. Disclaimer: all the quote-unquote mistakes I'm gonna mention here have exceptions and niche scenarios where it is useful to do them. I will talk about those exceptions all throughout this video. Also, I am nowhere close to being a pro at this game. I am, just like most of you, a student to the game, and I learn new things every day. So don't take everything I say as gospel, and try to think critically about how things apply to you personally. Also, I'm using classic TBC as an example here because this is what this channel is about. But these really apply to all versions of the game, including retail. But anyways, let's talk about the first mistake that you need to avoid making, and that is backpedaling. I still see a lot of players doing this all the time, and most of the time, unfortunately, they are tanks. So what is backpedaling and why is it bad to do? Let's talk about it. To start with, backpedaling is simply the fact of using your S key to make your character go backwards in a straight line. That's it. And there's a few different reasons why this is generally bad to do. But as I said at the start, there are also scenarios where it is useful to backpedal. To understand why backpedaling is bad, let's use the example of a tank in a dungeon pulling ranged mobs who cast spells, as this is the most obvious example, but certainly not the only one. As a tank, you'll be prone to pulling these types of ranged mobs all the time. The way to deal with them and get them to you without ninja pulling more mobs is simply to go away from their line of sight, so they start moving to you. Now, I think you start to understand why backpedaling is bad here. To effectively go line of sight of these mobs as fast as possible and not get casted on unnecessarily, you really want to move as fast as possible behind a wall, and not with the 50% movement speed that backpedaling has. But at the same time, you don't want to give your back to whatever melee mobs are attacking you. So instead of backpedaling or just running behind cover with their backs turned, what a good tank should do is use their strafe keys instead. The default keybinds for strafing are Q and E, and what strafing does is it rotates your character's body by 90 degrees. That way, you're less prone to dazing when running backwards, and at the same time, you're not backpedaling, so your movement speed is at its maximum. But don't think that this just applies to tanks. This generally applies to all classes and all specs. Whenever you want to go from point A to point B and you have mobs chasing you, you should really almost never use backpedaling. This will just increase the time it takes for you to reach your destination, and thus the amount of attacks the mob deals to you. Instead, use strafing to avoid getting dazed, but at the same time to have full run speed. As I said, backpedaling does have its uses. For example, when you have a ton of mobs attacking you, they tend to circle you. To circumvent that, what you can do is use backpedaling to keep the mobs facing you. It's also very useful to use backpedaling to fine-tune your position. For example, as a melee player, there's many scenarios where you want to stay as close to a boss's hitbox edge as possible. Using backpedaling to fine-tune your position to make sure you're as far as you can is very useful there. And the examples are still countless. I hope I explained backpedaling well enough and that you now understand when to use it and when not to use it. Let's move on. Next up, and you might have expected this one, clicking your spells. And I can definitely understand why people do this. MMOs are different than any other type of games. You have tens of buttons to press, and sometimes you just don't want to be bothered and just use your mouse and click where the icon is. That's fair. And unlike what a lot of people might let you think, not every spell or macro is worth keybinding, but generally 90% of them are, if you want to play the game efficiently. Just like for many quote mistakes in this video, this one is about reaction time. Moving your mouse then clicking something is undeniably slower than just pressing the corresponding button on your keyboard. For this reason, use keybinds and bind your spells as much as possible. Now, to be fair, the default UI doesn't make it incredibly obvious that you can keybind everything you see on screen. For the longest time, I thought that the lower bar, containing the buttons 1 to 9, etc., was the only keybinds I had access to, until someone told me that I could actually press escape, click on keybindings, go to multi-action bar, and keybind pretty much everything I see on screen there. You can also use add-ons to do this even more easily, the most popular one being Bartender. Just install it and use the command /kb in-game to easily bind anything you see on screen. While you're at it, rebind any keys that are after 4 on your main bar. The keys 5 and above are hard to access without moving your hand away from your movement keys, so those are generally not worth using. Instead, try to use shift keys, so shift 1, shift 2, etc. That way you don't need to move your hand away from your WASD keys. Now that you have your spells bound, experiment with your new keybinds by going and doing normal dungeons until those keys become muscle memory. It will take a while though, so keep practicing and fine-tuning things until you're comfortable with it. And then, once you're ready to take it to the next level, start binding consumables, and then your Hearthstone, and then your mount, until you finally have everything that you usually press keybound. Now, let's talk about things that you should not keybind. Generally speaking, anything you rarely use, you should not keybind. Unlike what many people might let you think, having literally everything keybound isn't gonna make you a better player. It will just add a ton of confusion. And when you forget a keybind, you're gonna spend more time remembering what it is than just clicking it. And that's exactly why you shouldn't bind everything. I'll take my Hunter as an example. I pretty much have everything keybound except Eagle Eye, Eyes of the Beast, and Snake Trap. All of those are niche abilities that do have their uses very rarely. The only time I use Snake Trap, for example, is in Alcatraz on the last boss, and I use it only once or twice there, so I honestly just click it. I know that I rarely use this ability, and when I do have to use it, I have enough time to click it, so I just do that, to be honest. Moving on, let's talk about keyboard turning. This one is straightforward, so we're not gonna talk about it too much. What keyboard turning is using your A and D keys to rotate your character. It just looks weird and it's slow and it serves no purpose really. Just like for all the things in this video, this one is about reaction time. If you want to face a direction and move to it, you really shouldn't use the unprecise and slow A and D keys. Instead, press your right mouse button, rotate your camera to the direction you want, and then press the forward key to move there. This is so much faster than using the slow turn right and turn left keys, which really should never be used in any scenario, unless you're dancing with your friends, I guess. In fact, what I suggest you do is rebind your strafe right and strafe left keys to A and D instead of Q and E, and use Q and E to keybind important spells. It takes a bit to get used to, but this is what the most advanced players do, and this is what I suggest you do too. Now, keyboard turning is useful in just one niche scenario that I can think of, and that's when you're busy eating or doing something else with your right hand, and thus you can't turn your character with your mouse. In that case, it's fine. Just use the good old arrow keys on your keyboard and keyboard turn, I guess. But 99% of the time, you should use your mouse to turn instead. Next, we have playing with nameplates disabled. This is a big mistake that, unfortunately, a lot of players keep doing all the time, reducing their spatial awareness. So the default key to enable nameplates is V, and there's also a macro that increases the nameplate distance that we will get to in a moment. But the reason you want to always have nameplates enabled is because you never know what's waiting for you behind a corner, and also because mobs tend to meld with the environment quite a lot, and nameplates circumvent that. And thanks to nameplates, you can easily clearly see when a mob is somewhere, and you can even see when they're behind walls, so you should always have this enabled. So you don't want to be that guy that ninja pulls something by mistake because they quote-unquote didn't see it. I see this excuse thrown thrown all the time, and most of the time, unfortunately, it's because the person that ninja pulls doesn't have nameplates enabled. And if they did, they could have saved everyone a run from the graveyard. Now, as with every tip on this video, sometimes it is a detriment to have nameplates enabled, specifically when there's just tons of mobs around. It can make it quite hard to see what's on screen. One example is when you enter Scholomance. If you have increased nameplate's distance, you actually see the mobs below the first floor, eating a lot of screen real estate. So I would disable it there, but generally I would keep it enabled all the time. Now, to talk about the increased nameplate distance command, here it is. We actually talked about it in another video in this channel, and it turns out that it doesn't work for everyone. So in the description, you will find this command and another one similar to it if this doesn't work. I would also try to do a /reload or close your game manually and try again. To make sure it works, try to change the numbers at the end of the command. 41 yards is the maximum allowed, so try to put it at 10 or 5 and see if it makes a difference. If it does, put it up back to 41 yards and that should be it. One small bonus mistake related to this is lacking spatial awareness. Having nameplates enabled helps you a lot to have spatial awareness, but generally you should always keep your eyes around everywhere and rotate your camera all the time to see if a patrol isn't coming for you or a mob decided to target you. A rule of thumb is try to always stay behind your tank at all times and away from the next pack. But that's all I have. Those were 4 mistakes that I see people commonly do all the time to this day in Classic TBC and in World of Warcraft in general. As I said at the start, we used Classic TBC as an example, but this applies to WoW in general, including retail, and I hope this helped someone out there learn a thing or two to make them a better player. Again, I am nowhere close to being a pro at this game, so if you think something I mentioned here is incorrect or inaccurate, let me know in the comments, and if you have more useful gameplay tips like this, also put them in the comments to benefit everyone. As always, thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the Classic WoW Curios channel for more content like this. I will see you guys in the next one very soon. Bye for now.